let's just start with when you heard the trade, and essentially it's four first-round picks of some order. Two are relatively protected. There's some protected. There's some unprotected. There's some switching of picks. It's a bunch of a gaggle of first-round picks or possible changing of picks, and Chris Paul's putrid contract for Russell Westbrook. What do you think?
Well, you know what? Good morning, Doug. There was a couple things that went through my head. First, the whole idea that you always hear, oh, you can't give it to that contract. Any contract that's signed can be somebody else will take it. I've seen it in every sport. Oh no, you'll never move him. Nobody will ever take him. And we just saw it happen.
Right. I mean,
because that's the first thing I thought was, wow, they moved that contract.
Joe Johnson had what people thought was a terrible contract. He was traded twice to different contracts. Carmelo Anthony's was traded to Atlanta. They paid and bought him out. But yes, you're right. Either of those contracts were seen as immovable contracts, Chris Paul's and Russell Westbrook, and they were both moved for each other.
There was the Prince Fielder trade in Detroit where he had the big contract, and the Texas Rangers took him. You know, so I've just seen this over and over. So I thought about that. I thought about my first reaction was, did either team really get better? I looked at it as trading disgruntled people and bad contracts for each other. That's what I thought.
The Houston Rockets got better. I personally love Chris Paul. I love his game. I don't think it fit in Houston. And I don't know how well Russell Westbrook fits in Houston with how they've always played.
That's why I said, yeah.
But Russell Westbrook at 30 years old, even with 4 knee surgeries, is a better, more impactful player. And frankly, the way that Houston plays spacing the floor with the lane wide open. I mean, the big issue with Oklahoma City was they just did not have enough shooting around Russell, around Paul George. And you know, to Russell's fault, he didn't shoot the ball well at all this year and doesn't take good shots. But look, Houston is better. Houston is a competent competitor for a championship going forward to next year as is. And this is the dismantling of a power in Oklahoma City and the potential retooling of a team that's going to start relatively from scratch.
And that was the other part was if you are an Oklahoma City fan, you had to be devastated, to be honest, because the organization threw the towel in, and you could get all the picks you want unless they really turn into something and you get fortunate in the draft and get somebody. They just had 3 great players that were drafted with that organization, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. And now you look up, all those guys are still playing, and none of them are in Oklahoma City.
Sure.
And you know, are they refunding? Can I get a refund if I had season tickets for next year? Because I definitely would want one. And I would tell Oklahoma City, let me know when you're back in the NBA, and then I'll be interested in doing this again. Well, that's why I never thought Westbrook was going to be traded, because of the business of basketball.
It's a really interesting point, and I do think that if there's a concern there, and I would tell you, like, you know, look, Oklahoma City drawing, they have because they've been so good and because it's been such a great atmosphere, it's really hurt everything else in Oklahoma. Even some of the football ticket sales, you know, early in the year, you're choosing basketball, but definitely college basketball has died.
Is that right?
Because you used to go to Oklahoma State game, or you used to go to Oklahoma game, and now everybody goes to the Thunder game. But if there's a question about the longevity of that franchise, if they have a couple of bad years, what do the stands look like then? You know, it's been one of the best, if not the best, home court advantage in the sport since they moved from Seattle. And early on it was because they were new, and then since then it's because they're good. I think it's a great fan base, but you're really a great fan base if you show up and your product's crummy, right? And their product's not going to be good. Look, I mean, they kind of had to do it. I mean, once Russell Westbrook's name was mentioned in the Raptors trade, it was over, right? It's once you go to the divorce attorney, good luck going, no, honey, well, let's try and work this thing out.
Well,
right?
People try to work things out, and my only thing is I didn't think he would be traded just because it's a total upheaval of the organization, and basically what you just said, you want to start from scratch. And I don't know, in this man's NBA, There is, Doug, no 5-year plan. No, you can sit around and talk about, but
I think they have
down the road.
I think they have a good plan. I personally think they have a good plan.
Well, I'll tell you that 5 years, 10 years from now, they still won't win the NBA championship. I can say that very confidently.
You don't know who's going to be on their team. Right, it's one of those things.
I just haven't seen it.
5 years ago, I'm sure you said the same thing about the LA Clippers, and they actually had good players.
No,
now you're picking them. Now you're going to pick them to win the championship.
Yeah, but the only difference
like the
is
whole league has changed in 2 weeks, and you're going to predict what happens in 5 years.
Yes.
Look, this is where the league is. The league has become.
But it's not about developing players that are going to be there. It's about getting stars to come to your team. That's what I'm saying.
Listen,
they just traded away stars.
They're never coming to Oklahoma City.
Why not?
Because that's the reality of the
No,
sport.
the sport's changed. People
aren't
going they're not going to the Lakers, and they're not going to the Knicks.
They just went to the Lakers.
No, they didn't. Oh, that was a trade. No free agents went to the Lakers.
LeBron James went to the Lakers last year.
Not LeBron. LeBron came here for movies. I'm talking about the other. You just had 5 great free agents, and nobody was interested in coming with LeBron James.
That's not true. Like, again, you can say it and you can yell it and you can tell me I'm wrong, but it's just not true. First of all, LeBron James came. There's no bigger free agent than him. Whatever his reasons for coming, he came to the Lakers. So they got the biggest free agent that there has been in the last 5 years.
How many guys came to play with Kobe?
Hold on. Second, he's not Kobe Bryant.
Okay.
And by the way, Dwight Howard came to play with Kobe.
And he left $30 million on the table to leave because he didn't want to be here.
But you didn't. You said they weren't coming. They did come. Okay? By the way, Anthony Davis forced that trade because he wanted to play there. So you can say it didn't happen, but it did happen. There's two. Those are two of the top 5 players in the NBA that wanted to be with the LA Lakers. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, look, the reality of the sport is, and New Orleans knows this, and Oklahoma City knows this, and frankly, Indiana knows it. They all know that they can't get, and this is going to be a big problem for Adam Silver, who's been so pro player that this movement it's going to be celebrated. But the problem is you're going to have half the franchise in the league that don't believe they can compete unless they get 18-year-olds in the NBA draft and develop them and hope that in the next collective bargaining agreement, they basically have a franchise tag so you can't let a player out. This is a problem. Oklahoma City's known this for a decade. They've known they couldn't get a free agent. That's why they've had to trade for Victor Oladipo. That's why they had to trade really, they had to choose. They believe they had to choose between keeping James Harden and keeping Serge Ibaka. Like, people want to be critical, and it's fair that they trade away James Harden. One, James Harden wasn't James Harden. Secondly, back when they chose Serge Ibaka, they had to have 2 big guys to beat the Lakers, who were the best team in the league, and to beat the Spurs. It's a different league now. They chose the wrong guy, but they chose it for the right ideas at the time.
Yeah, I just, when you talk about draft picks, I remember Danny Ainge had, what did he have, 10, 11 picks in all his trades that he did when he made the big trade with the Brooklyn Nets and all that. He's still looking and still figuring out that I have to go out and get players signed.
Right, he's in Boston. He's able to get free agents.
No, I know, but
he hasn't been able. But and by the way, people want to be critical of the Boston Celtics. They've been damn good. They've been one of the elite teams. They just haven't been able to get to the finals. It's really hard. It's hard. There's only been one LeBron James, and he dominated the East. And in the West, it's hard because you got the Golden State Warriors.
I just saw Toronto with no first-round lottery picks, just win a championship. All they did is they did basketball the old-fashioned way. They added a couple pieces to a team, but there was nothing special there.
They traded for the best player in the game.
No, but they gave up their best player. It wasn't like they got him for nothing.
Okay.
They made a trade.
Correct. And then they made trades.
They wanted the old-fashioned way is all I'm saying to you.
What old-fashioned way?
They made trades. That's what they did. They didn't put together a collection of star players. That's all. It was different.
They also benefited from the fact that LeBron left the East. They benefited from the fact that the Celtics had chemistry problems. And look, they don't win the championship if Kevin Durant's healthy.
If what? They won, Doug. You could sit here all day. I get that. You could say that all day. And if LeBron didn't water down the East, he wouldn't have gone to the finals 8 years in a row. I get it. I get it.
You're right there. Okay, but the point is that if the Toronto model is the model, and I think it probably is for the smaller markets, and I know Toronto's not a small market, but it really is essentially the model there, which is you draft a bunch of dudes, you throw a bunch of stuff out there, and then maybe if you can trade for an elite level player, knowing he's going to leave, that's what, look what New Orleans is trying to do. They lucked into Zion. They hope that Zion loses weight and becomes what people think he can be. And maybe, just maybe, if they're good enough in 3 or 4 years, they can use all that draft equity and some cap space and trade for a guy that puts them over the top.
Unless, of course, Zion doesn't want to be there.
Right.
And
right.
There we go.
You're pointing out my point,
No,
which is the problem, is that all those small markets, and you throw in, Charlotte into the mix with Indy, with New Orleans, with Oklahoma City, and look what's happened to San Antonio. And you say, how do we compete? But to me, the bigger story is, man, I gotta give it to Daryl Morey and the Houston Rockets. I don't love watching Russell Westbrook play. I don't like watching James Harden play, but I will tell you, both of them can really, really play. I don't
think they're any closer to winning a championship with Westbrook.
How could you not say that?
I just don't.
Okay,
and I'm not saying I'm not a Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul was a problem there. I really do. And him and Harden apparently didn't get along. And there was a point, I guess, this year, and we're going to talk to Vince Goodwill from Yahoo Sports, where I think he demanded a trade. Chris Paul. It's a him or me or kind of situation. And I guess they said it was you.
Well, look, I mean, Chris Paul, Houston believes they did right by him by giving him the contract that they promised to give him when they traded for him, right? Which is all amazing. Like, all of these kind of chain of events, right? From Oklahoma City trading James Harden to the Clippers trading Chris Paul, which is what created the cap space eventually and some of the player movement that ended up landing them Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, which landed Chris Paul back in Oklahoma City. Like, it is all kind of incestuous and interrelated. But look, we're all going to sit here and kill Russell Westbrook because he had a terrible year shooting the ball from the free throw line. He didn't shoot it well from 3, and he has had 4 knee surgeries. And I'm not convinced that he's nearly as good as his stats would tell you. But he has averaged a triple-double the last 3 years, something we haven't seen since Oscar Robertson played. You do have the most dominant offensive player statistically in the league over the past 5 years in James Harden. And then you do have shooters. And, look, they almost won a title 2 years ago. I don't know if they're as good, but I don't know, we're all assuming that the Clippers, everything is perfect, that Paul George stays healthy. We're all assuming that the Lakers, I think Houston got better. I think they're right there in the conversation, probably maybe slightly behind those other two, but not that far behind. And when you have oft-injured pieces like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and you have an older piece like LeBron James, it's not crazy to think if any of them get hurt, the Houston Rockets could win a title because they are that good, and they are that. You still have Eric Gordon, still have Clint Capella, and you still have P.J. Tucker. They kept all their pieces, and they added Russell Westbrook. They're better. They're a championship caliber team.
And they still have the same coach who can't get them over the hump. And that style, I don't know if you're ever really going to win a championship. I mean, he's had great teams. How many great teams did he have in Phoenix? All I'm saying is I'm not convinced that they're any closer. Are they still in the realm? Are they in the conversation? Are they in the mix, Doug? Absolutely they're in that. But I don't know if it wasn't like I thought, wow, they got put over the top. Wow, the Clippers aren't the overwhelming favorites to me. Wow, the Lakers are going to be the 8th seed. I didn't feel like that after the deal. That's all I'm saying. It didn't move me either way. All right, are they in the mix? Sure, they're in the mix, but they were in the mix before the trade.
But imagine if you didn't have a cell phone. You're like, I'm gonna travel without the cell phone. I'm gonna turn it off. I'm not gonna pay attention to it. You come back to the couch, it's like, all right, I've been gone for a week. What'd I miss? Well, Kawhi Leonard's a Clipper. The Thunder traded Paul George. They did what? They traded Paul George, and then they traded Russell Westbrook.
Right.
They excuse me? And then you do wonder if what I think anyone who has ever played basketball would deem a questionable or bad shot from Damian Lillard, if that's the straw that broke the camel's back. If Oklahoma City wins that game and they go back to Oklahoma City, for what was that, Game 6? How does history change itself because of one jump shot?
You know what's crazy?
Crazy.
Is Chris Broussard and Antonio Daniels both, when the playoffs were going on, both picked them to go to the Western Conference Finals. They thought that they had the easiest path and all that. And I was like, really? I don't see it. I did bet both of them, chicken wings, and won both bets.
Okay.
But my point was, that's where they were just this past season, to make your point that people thought that what they had was good enough to get to the Western Conference Finals. And now it's totally undone.
Yeah. Yeah, well, not totally undone. They got to part ways with Dennis Schroeder's contract, probably part ways with Steven Adams' contract. If they get rid of those two contracts, then it's completely. But first, you got to figure out what you're going to do with Chris Paul. So the story goes, his agent reached out to the Thunder and said, "Hey, I mean,
do you want Chris
my
Paul?
Basketball club? Well, I think
I'm asking you. No, I mean like NBA teams. Is there a market? Oh my God, I have to have Chris Paul, or has he played himself out of that? But we already know, Doug. There's the other issues with players. He feels like he acts like he's the GM and the coach. A lot of guys don't like him from that standpoint. But is he like a missing piece to some team that you see out there where you go, let's get Chris Paul and we're in the mix. We're going to the finals.
Well, okay, this is a very important point to make. Okay, this to me is my best point that I will make to you.
All right.
Ever on radio.
Already, this is too early.
No,
this is
I can make it again. The way we do things in radio.
I just
You
wanna
say
make
something
sure.
once, you didn't actually say it.
Okay.
You ready for
And
it?
then you do the other 3 shows on television. You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay.
This is okay. I say this to the makeup people. Every place I've ever been, whether ESPN, CBS, now Fox, I say, listen, you did great because I did not give you a blank canvas. Okay?
I got you.
So I use that because would I want Chris Paul above any other point guard in the NBA? No. Chris Paul in his prime, probably the best pure point guard of this generation in the NBA. I think he's great. And yeah, if the story is he didn't like James Harden dribbling the ball to death and not playing defense, then get in line because we're all with you, Chris Paul. Maybe sometimes the way in which he expresses himself is not revered in certain circles. So do I think, though, Chris Paul at 34 years old with the 2 years remaining on a contract, with a couple years remaining on it, but I think 3 years remaining.
3 years, right.
3 years
is a
remaining
lot
on
of money.
A lot of money.
Lot.
Do I think that's a great contract that people around the league are like, dude, we could get Chris Paul today, huh? How's that look at 35, 36, and 37 years old, right? That doesn't look great.
And I think
30.
the last year is like $43 million or so. I mean,
it's a lot of money.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of money. So do I think everybody wants him? No, but I think somebody like Miami who's sitting there going, all right, we got Jimmy Butler. Like, what are we going to do here? We got a point guard with an expiring contract. Chris Paul is better than him. And look, I still think Chris Paul, though he didn't look good in several of those games with the Golden State Warriors, part of why he was unhappy was he wasn't being used the right way.
I understand that.
Like, look, Chris Paul is a ball screen point guard.
But people thought that before they even added him.
I got
right?
it. I got it.
People were like, this doesn't fit, and yet it was like Daryl Morey was about the names, the stars.
I think he made the same mistake that the Lakers made with Steve Nash. Granted, Steve Nash was hurt, so you never really got any of it. But the mistake was, hey, Steve Nash is a great shooter, and yeah, he's a great passer. Why can't a great shooter play off the ball with Kobe Bryant? Like, look, dude, you obviously haven't played basketball before because guys that play with the ball in their hands, they can't play without the ball. Once you get to 30, you ain't gonna be like, okay, now I'm gonna play without the ball in my hands. Like,
I'll go over there. You handle the ball.
Like you've done radio shows with another person,
right?
But there are a lot of guys that they've done a radio show solo, and now it's saying like, hey, let's put a partner with him. Like, yeah, that doesn't really like Colin Cowherd is incredible.
Right.
He's incredible.
To be able to do a show.
He has Joy Taylor there to do the news, but it is not a co-host show.
No, it's his show.
Right? You're not going to put me or you with him like, why don't you guys co-host? Because that's not what he does.
Right.
So you don't do that with Chris Paul. So I still think there is some juice left in that orange. Do I think that the whole league is sitting there going like, dude, we can go get him. Let's do whatever. No. And I think Oklahoma City, frankly, did a solid. And all right, we'll take your bad contract. Just give us some first-round picks, and we'll figure out what to do with it. And they'll probably get, far less in return than they want, and maybe have to take on an expiring contract or two in order to get there.
Now, I don't know about the money and how it would have to work and whatever, but if he's gets a buyout, if you're the Lakers, are you interested in him to play with LeBron James?
Yes. They don't have a point. They don't have any point guard of his repute.
Because they said, and I'm not buying that LeBron James is the point guard as they said that he was going to play point guard.
Yeah, he's always played point guard.
Right, but I'm saying the position of point guard. I agree. He has the ball and he passes, but
What is he initiates the offense, he brings the ball up, he sets the offense, he runs the screen
all
roll.
right,
That in fact is a point guard.
okay, so my point is that then when the story came out that he was going to be the point guard,
Yes.
he was already a point guard.
Correct.
The way he played, so I didn't think that was a big story the way he handles the ball.
Well,
But
I
my
mean,
point
it just means that they don't have the expectation. Quinn Cook's not a starting point guard in this league. He's kind of whatever. The Rondo one, I don't really know why they signed him. He did shoot above 30 from three, but Rondo can't guard anybody anymore. He can't really play anymore. Alex Caruso is the one guy on that roster that could be a starting point guard. They love him.
And you know what? He played well last year.
He played
At the
really,
end of the
really
year,
well.
I was impressed.
He played really well. Those guys all like him. He can defend, and he's gotten to where he can make a shot. But I mean, if you tell me I can get Chris Paul, you'd have to get rid of some of the contracts that they just signed. It has to work dollar for dollar.
So is it worth it though? I'm saying
if they buy him out,
if there's a buyout and you're the Lakers,
are you kidding?
I'm just.
But
asking.
they're not. I don't think Oklahoma City's buying him out. They're gonna move. They're gonna move him because if there's some interest from Houston, they'll find a way to move him to Houston and maybe take back an expiring bad contract or two. So that would be.
That would be your guess, not that they would just.
Well, that's also kind of what's been reported, right? I do think they could find. I also don't think it would be crazy to think there is the outside chance that Michael Jordan comes in and throws Jordan Brand, CP3's Jordan Brand. He's from North Carolina. It wouldn't be a terrible way to end his career, and they're kind of stuck in no man's land.
Right, and they need a starter.
They just signed Terry Rozier to way too much money. So I don't know how that would all work, but that's the only one that kind of popped in my head that we haven't heard of.
That totally makes sense. I mean, because those things do work in the league, being from somewhere, you know what I mean, a little star marquee, but you're right, they just made a deal.
Yeah, the whole thing is going to be fascinating to me. You know, the one part of the Clippers love fest that we have not yet gotten, that no one can provide any sort of data, is, look, I get that the Clippers on paper look like a perfect team, right? You got Lou Williams coming off the bench, so you got buckets coming off the bench. Patrick Beverley is not really a point guard, so he doesn't have to be really a point guard when you have Paul George who can handle it, and you have Kawhi Leonard who can handle it, and he can play on the ball, he can play off the ball, and he's tremendous defensively. You know, whatever they do with Montrezl Harrell and some of the big guys. But name me a guy outside of Kawhi who has done it in the playoffs, right? Like, if there's a knock against Paul George, two things. One, it's that he can't stay healthy, right? He had both shoulders operated on. He had his knee scoped the year before. He obviously broke his leg going back with Team USA. So he can't stay healthy. And then two, he hasn't performed nearly to his normal level in the playoffs most years, and especially in Oklahoma City, but then even late in the run with the Indiana Pacers. So you look at, like, everybody loves Patrick Beverley. I love Patrick Beverley, but it wasn't like he was killing the Golden State Warriors there. When Kevin Durant decided he had enough, that was enough.
Well, what I like about that team is basically, what they were able to do last year. Win 48 games. You remember after they traded Tobias Harris,
they tried to go like, hey, we're okay. We'll get to the lottery and even though they got rid of Tobias Harris, they bowed up and had a great run.
They had a great run, and then I love they beat Kevin Durant and the Warriors twice in Oakland. A healthy Kevin Durant. I mean, yeah. I know it was the first round and they still lost the series. But they showed me a little something without any stars, and now they have two.
No question. And they have a championship caliber. They have the only, I'm trying to think, of these teams, right? I mean, we're not talking about Golden State. Who else has a coach who's actually won a championship before?
Doc Rivers.
And they actually had that with Doc Rivers.
And he did a great job last year, too. He really did with that squad.
And people try to run him out of town. Hi, I'm Doug Gottlieb from Fox Sports Radio, and you need to subscribe to the Fox Sports Radio YouTube channel where you can hear and see me. Why not? Plus everybody else who's awesome here in Fox Sports Radio.